You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
And welcome to this edition of the Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast. I am your host, Richard Franzi. This is podcast episode number 1149, and it's our interview number 1457. Wow, awesome. Driven by clients' need, American Business Bank focuses on individual needs with sound and proven banking practices to bring you profits. And they focus only on one niche, middle market companies. Well, there you go. We just answered one of the questions I was going to ask you. My friend Kyle McGuire, who's a VP and Senior Relationships Manager, is here to talk with us about his bank, American Business Bank. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rick. I'm really happy to be here. This is my first time on the radio.
Oh, boy. And streaming live on video. For those of you who want to watch us on video, you can do that as well. But let's start by talking about a topic that I know you're familiar with. Tell us about yourself, Kyle, and how did you get to where you are now in this position with this bank?
Sure. Well, that's a good question. And it's interesting. I can actually point to a seminal moment in my career, early in my commercial banking career, where that led me to where I am today. My first job in commercial banking was as a commercial loan officer, and I was working for a very big bank. And my job was to was to develop new business opportunities for the bank, underwrite the credit, and book the loan.
Okay.
And from there, I passed that loan and the business owner off to a relationship manager. And my go-to person for all of my key relationships was a guy named Mike. And Mike's job was to keep that client happy while they were at the bank, to service their needs, and to be their point person going forward. That relationship was no longer mine, and I was no longer allowed to contact that client I brought to the bank. So one day, I walked by Mike's office, and I hear him speaking to one of my clients that I had brought to the bank, and they're having a great conversation. They were making plans to go out for dinner or a ball game, and really having a personal conversation. And I remember a smile came to my face as I reflected back on that particular business owner and what a good person he was, and I was pleased that he was in good hands with Mike. At that same moment, or right after that, I felt that smile drop from my face, and something clicked in my head, and the proverbial light went on.
Right.
And it was at that moment that I realized that I was building the bank's business, and I was building Mike's business.
Right.
But I wasn't building my business.
Because you were doing a transaction.
I was just chasing a sales commission.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that I needed to work under a different business model in order to have a career with any kind of longevity and really satisfaction other than, getting a payday.
Uh-huh.
And so it took me a little while, it took me a few years, but with the focus on the right environment for how I wanted to operate my business, I found American Business Bank about 5.5 years ago.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, it's the most entrepreneurial environment I know of in the banking community.
So many in our listening audience, and we have small and middle market business owners from across the country, but also many from here in Southern California, they may not be familiar with American Business Bank. Is that fair to say?
It's very fair to say. I wasn't familiar with it until I was recruited to work there.
And you're in the industry.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
It's interestingly enough, the bank doesn't advertise. We don't even have signs on our building where we have offices. And so that alone is a unique trait about the bank. But
Okay.
American Business Bank only serves privately held middle market businesses in Southern California.
Okay.
The crux of those clients range in revenue size from $10 million at the low end up to $150 million to $200 million at the high end. Most of them are in between $15 and $75 million.
Okay.
And, so while we have that specific niche within the banking industry, we even drill down a little bit further to focus primarily on companies that are business to business in nature.
Oh, really?
Most of those transactions can take place business to business with a check, a wire, or an ACH.
Okay.
And so without going into too much detail, those defined industry segments include manufacturing, wholesale distribution, construction, professional services, and nonprofit organizations.
So the universe for you, as far as the client potential, is pretty defined. Then, I mean, that leaves out a lot of potential clients in Orange County.
Very much so. And since the bank's inception in 1998, it's been very intentional to not be all things to all people.
Right. But then that must mean that you kind of know what that type of client needs more, and maybe are better attuned to service those needs. I don't know. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but
no, 100%.
Okay.
And in fact, most big banks, they're there to serve everyone.
Right.
Whether you're a business owner looking for a student loan, a personal checking account. And so I make the comparison that, the large banks that I won't name that we all know of, when someone walks into one of those banks, it's kind of like walking into Walmart. You can buy a set of tires, a shirt, a television, any of the above. But it's going to be pretty hard to find someone who understands what you're looking for and the application you're looking to use, the product you're shopping for. And so those clients that work with the large banks, they're basically shopping at Walmart.
Okay.
I like to say that my clients shop at Nordstrom. If a client walks into Nordstrom, they're only there for a certain number of items. You can only buy clothing and a few household items there. But when you walk into a Nordstrom and you ask an attendant that you're shopping for a red sweater, they're going to take you to the red sweaters, and they're going to lay them all out there for you, and you can make a decision quickly with all the information in front of you.
Right.
And so that's the type of service we try to deliver to our clients at American Business Bank, understanding our clients' needs and meeting them.
So I wanted to ask what makes your firm unique. I feel like we've maybe talked about some of what makes American Business Bank different and unique. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to share?
Well, actually there is. American Business Bank is the most unique bank I've ever worked at. And really the culture of the bank stems from placing more importance on people than on profit. And that translates to both clients and employees alike.
Okay.
As bankers, we're allowed to be ourselves. We're allowed to be authentic within the bank. We're allowed to make mistakes.
Okay.
And when you're comfortable in your own skin, you can go out and do a good job for your clients as well. And so the biggest thing is that as bankers, our charter is to get to know our clients so well that we understand not only how their business works from the inside out, but also to know our clients personally. Once you have a personal relationship with a client, you can't help but do your very best for them,
right?
And to hold their best interest at heart.
So you're dealing with a very specific type of business owner based on what you've discussed. Do you find that when people come to the bank after maybe being at a more full-service bank, I'm not saying you're not full service, but I'm saying the bigger, trying to do more things for more people.
Sure.
How long does it take them to realize that you have a different service model? I mean, is it
usually within an hour of meeting them?
Okay.
I can't tell you how many times a business owner has given me feedback during an initial meeting that they've never been asked these types of questions, or that just the types of questions I'm asking are unique compared to any other banker that they've met with. And so that usually sets the tone. And then, just from a technical standpoint, they're always working with people who can make decisions, people who are equipped to make decisions. Bankers are, just to cite one example, every banker is the first approver on any credit that's requested at the bank. And so transparency being a key value of ours, if a client asks me for a loan and I'm able to do it, or I believe I can do it, I'm going to be the first approver on that credit.
Okay.
However, if we're not going to do the loan, I'm also the person saying no and why not.
Okay. You can't hide from it.
I can't hide from it. Right. So
Wow.
The bank trusts us to make decisions on behalf of clients and the bank as well. So that's really a unique aspect that our clients really do appreciate, and it makes them comfortable to know that when they ask a question or if they ask if something's possible, the person sitting across the desk from them can give them an answer with a high degree of certainty.
Right. So we're talking with Kyle McGuire. We're talking about his profession as a professional banker, and we're talking about his bank, which is American Business Bank. I don't know, maybe you grew up as a young child wanting to someday handle money and be a banker, but I got to ask you, why do you do what you do, Kyle?
Yeah, sure. And it's interesting. When I was a kid, I had an aunt who called me Alex P. Keaton after that show, Family Ties, because I was into money and finance, and I was a finance major in college. And so I've been in the finance industry since 1998. But I found my niche, and when I really became passionate about commercial banking soon after I started, because I get to bank the American dream. Entrepreneurs are, I found, to be the most courageous, kind, and talented people that you're ever going to come across. They're like modern day cowboys. They stick their neck out every day, and they lay it all on the line. Something that spawned from an idea in their garage or their living room, and a few years later, it's grown to, to be housed in a warehouse or an office.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, the employment of thousands of people and their families rely on each of my clients' ability to show up every day and really make decisions that are impacting so many people, and they've got the courage to do that. And to me, there's no better thing I can be supporting professionally. I may have been able to do it as an attorney or some other professional service provider, but my personality and my skill set led me to banking. And just the opportunity to learn from entrepreneurs every day is what gets me out of bed.
And you've been in the banking industry how long?
Just over 15 years.
Okay. So you've been through at least one recession.
Correct.
The big one. Right.
Sure.
And so just, we're in good times now, right?
We are.
I mean, I'm sure the clients that you're banking, their financials are looking hopefully better than they have ever before because of this recovery.
Many of them are, and
Right.
many of them came out of the last recession becoming much leaner and much more efficient than they were going into it.
Okay.
And so now, now that the revenues have either recovered or to meet or exceed where they were at before, they're seeing even better profit margins than they did before the downturn.
Right. So I have to imagine it's more fun to be a banker in this economy than in the downturn recession times when things are tighter.
It's a lot more fun. And, there was a time there when there were very few deals to be looking at and very
Right.
few clients who were pursuing banking opportunities and a whole lot of banks chasing those opportunities.
Yes.
And so, one thing that I'm really inspired by, working where I work is that we have the opportunity to, our goal, I should say, is to bank the best companies we can find, not to chase a transaction. And the philosophy there is that when our clients grow, the bank's going to grow.
Sure.
And whether that means they're borrowing money to expand in an environment that we're in now economically, or if it means that they don't need to borrow money, typically their bank account's going to grow. So the bank's going to benefit from either scenario. And right now, we're seeing both sides of the coin. We're seeing clients very aggressively pursue opportunities that are before them, and those that are making a lot of money and don't need to borrow, they're paying down their debt.
Right.
Which most of my clients have learned from the last downturn how they need to be prepared and positioned the next time the economy softens.
Yeah. It's good to have that line of credit, but it's good to have it clean. Right?
It is.
Free and available. We're talking with Kyle McGuire. I've got a few more questions. I got like 4 minutes with you, my friend.
Terrific.
Can you think of a recent business decision you made or you saw someone in your organization or one of your clients make that, the outcome was really different than what they or their team had intended it to be? And if you can think of a time like that, can you share that?
Yeah, and one that sticks out to me probably the most is it was really a lesson that was learned, an unintended consequence that was realized after the fact. And what I mean by that is the bank has historically pursued mature, well-capitalized businesses. And we never had a small business administration department. And so the Small Business Administration provides credit enhancement for banks to loan to companies that they wouldn't otherwise lend to.
Mm-hmm.
And so late last year, we took on an SBA department that we never had before. And, in hindsight, looking back, we've all sat around and realized all the wonderful opportunities and the wonderful people that we're able to bank because we have that that offering to them, and then they're able to then grow into what we once defined as the right client.
Wow.
And so the unintended consequences that of not having an SBA group were all the wonderful entrepreneurs that we passed along the way that, in hindsight, we really missed out.
Well, that's a great one. Thank you for calling that up on the spur of the moment here, Kyle McGuire. All right, so what do you do, and can you share with our audience maybe where you go to get outside perspective and insights on the challenges that you're facing within your business?
Sure, yeah, and one thing that's unique, I've touched on it before, but an American Business Bank, I run my own business essentially, and each banker does. And so when I'm having challenges within my business, and whether it's with a client or helping them with an opportunity, or how do I structure a credit that I think is going to work, my first go-to are my colleagues, because they're running their own business and they've seen situations similar to mine, and that's the first place I go. But beyond that, to get a fresh perspective. I'm actually in your trusted advisors group, where we sit around a table with a dozen or so individuals who also serve business owners here in the local market.
Right. And
one thing that you'll learn real quickly is that 75% of all business is the same. We all have the same challenges, whether it's with customer service or business development, or stagnation, or whatever emotion we might have to deal with in running our own little businesses. Oh. And so that's a huge resource for me too.
Oh, thank you for saying that. It was unplanned but appreciated. All right, final question. Can you share your core philosophy that you're using to lead and grow your book of business, your firm, since you use that term as you're your own business banker? So,
yeah, I mean, really at the core of it is just being genuine and being transparent. And, really to get to that, my philosophy for developing new business is just to, for every person I meet with, every conversation I have with someone, my goal is to make that person better after our conversation than they were before the conversation. And sometimes they may be able to hopefully do that on the spot. Sometimes it's an hour later, sometimes it's a month later. But that's how I approach my day, and that's how I approach each meeting and interaction that I have with people throughout the day.
I'm curious, and we're off script, but I'm wondering, it seems to me that it must be difficult to get a business owner to change banks. Of all the intricate interrelationships between a business and a third party, it feels like to me that the banking one can be one of the most intertwined. Is that wrong?
That's 100% correct.
Okay.
And no one wakes up on a Monday morning thinking, I think I'm going to change banks today.
Yeah, and all that goes along with that.
All that goes along with that. You're absolutely right. And so, and then on top of that, we have a credit component where clients I pursue, or clients who are referred to me, they have to qualify for the loan or the credit facility they're looking for. So, it even gets a little bit more complicated sometimes. But really, by my business model and the business model of most of my colleagues at American Business Bank is really to become a resource for the best business owners we can find, and find good people to work with. And eventually, it has to be an organic transition. They have to have a need. They have to be unhappy with where they're at in order to make that move. And so if you've already been a resource to them for an extended period, you're a known quantity. In fact, most of my clients who I've brought over, who I work with currently, they became my clients because I solved a problem for them that had nothing to do with their banking.
Oh, wow.
So you really, in our role, you've got to be a broker of information and a provider of resources. And then, you hope that when the opportunity for a bank change occurs with that client, that they look to you first.
Yeah, they give you a phone call.
Exactly.
So if they would like to look you up on the internet, say there's somebody out there listening to us live on OC Talk Radio, or maybe in the future on iTunes or something, how do they find your bank online, Kyle McGuire?
The bank's website is www.americanbsbank.com. www.americanbusinessbank.com.
Well, this has been fun, and I look
It
forward to
has.
having you in the studio. Thank you for coming in and sharing a little bit about your philosophy and your bank and being a part of the community. It's been great.
Well, thanks a lot for having me.
All right, and I'd like to thank our engineer for today, none other than Paul Roberts, and our producers without whom we could not do this show, Joan Park, Crystal Nunley, and Haley Stern. If you'd like to connect with me on social media, let's start with LinkedIn. I'm Richard Franzi, Franzi. Until our next show, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.
You have been listening to Critical Mass Radio Show Business Talk Show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
See, we like the sound of our own voice. We're not intimidated by it. We like the sound of it. I do. I can listen to myself forever.
It is the best practice to listen to your interview. People, I have a guest from last week said, I finally summoned the courage. I'm like, I don't know, it's only 20 minutes.
Support for this NPR podcast and the following message come from Lucille Packard Children's Hospital Stanford, bringing the enormous expertise at Stanford to the smallest of patients. With new hybrid surgical suites and PET MRI imaging, they're redefining specialized pediatric care.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. In the close to contentious opening day of confirmation hearings, Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh had the final word. The judge reading his opening statement after hours of debate between Democrats and Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee about how to move forward. Kavanaugh said in his view the court must never be viewed as a partisan institution, and he laid out his judicial philosophy.
A judge must be independent and must interpret the law, not make the law. A judge must interpret statutes as written. A judge must interpret the Constitution as written, informed by history and tradition and precedent.
Some Democrats had objected to a mass release of documents on Kavanaugh last night, saying they had no time to read them. President Trump, for his part, accused critics of Kavanaugh of looking to inflict pain and embarrassment. Details are emerging about a new book by journalist Bob Woodward looking at President Trump's first 18 months in office. Washington Post citing excerpts of the yet-to-be-released book, including Trump's own chief of staff, John Kelly, calling him an idiot in private. Kelly's denying he ever said that. The book also claims Trump wanted Syrian President Bashar al-Assad assassinated, but his defense secretary reportedly ignored the request. The White House has called the book, titled Fear, quote, nothing more than fabricated stories. It's a primary day in Massachusetts where a closely watched battle is underway for a congressional seat in Greater Boston. As Anthony Brooks of member station WBUR reports, a longtime Democratic incumbent who's white faces the first black woman to sit on the Boston City Council.